So this week I set out a goal to create a robot that could swipe a phone screen as well as double tap. Very simple prototype, not meant to be anything more than a prototype. I started the project on Monday with the goal of doing it within a couple of days, working on it maybe 4 to 6 hours a day. Today it's Friday and I'm just wrapping up this video, so about 24 to 30 hours of work is represented in this proof of concept. Basically, I wanted to see if it's feasible to build a robot that can actually interact with a screen. I have this idea: touchless swiping, because I can, because we should, and it will be touchless because I will use, I think, IR pairs, emitter receiver. So I'm thinking if you go like this to one of them, here I've got a diagram. Touchless swiping. This is the phone, and we'll have a wheel that spins, turny, and it'll go up and down. It'll double tap the screen. Over here I've got IR pairs, emitter receiver. And then 2 servos, one for up and down motion and another for rotational. Now the question is, can we get away with using DC motor for this? I think we can, because we can pulse exactly how much voltage and when and for the duration into one of these, rather than, this is kind of overkill, and you get a lot of torque with this for sure. I need these good servos for my robot projects, so I'm trying to do this with maybe just junk parts. Here's some junk parts. More stuff fished out of the trash recently. And these are just 4 wires in the ribbon cable, but they're basically 2 wire. There's just DC motor, the brush in there. But this is the idea, right? Some kind of capacitive thingy. I think the real trick is going to be doing something like, and then there's sideways swiping. So that's something to think about. We're going to need a microcontroller to deal with this, unless we want to do it all with 555 timers and whatnot, but I am going to reach for an Arduino. And really, for me, the only way to build a project like this is to just draw a quick sketch and then get right to work on it, because it's not going to build itself. And yeah, there might be somebody out there who'll show you how to do it. Really? Maybe? So, going to do our best with this old breadboard. This is the one that had the tape on it from a previous video. And at this point, I'm working real quick. I've got a breadboard wired up to the Arduino. 3 rows dedicated for power and ground. First off is I'm going to try using the PWM to drive this guy. I might put a resistor, maybe a potentiometer in this circuit somewhere to control this speed of this, maybe just for fine tuning. And as pointed out elsewhere, white tape, because I'm going to flag all my wires with pin-out numbers and that sort of thing, just to keep ahead of my own disorganizational sense of existence. Problem is, I can't find my scissors at the moment. I need scissors. Where did they go? They're always walking off. Now, who says Legos are not useful for mechanical engineering and prototyping? They are by far the most useful. So I'm gonna need gonna need a bunch. Go around the loop a couple times. Coating of that, step 1. And I'm not really in the mood to get too finicky about the fit and finish of this, because after all, it's Legos and an abused breadboard and a very old Arduino. Not that any of this stuff really changes a whole lot. Recycling. Okay, now we'll put on our copper tape. Maybe put it on upside down. I can't really see what I'm doing here. I want to squeeze that down all the way around the circumference. So now I've got pretty smooth surface. Probably that'll be a problem, I'm guessing, is that there's not much give to this, and this is, being that it's metal, might leave a little mark on the screen after a while, but yeah. Just to note, copper tape, now I'm not touching the tape, I'm insulated by this dielectric material, plastique, so it does definitely work. Also, what works to some degree is just a little bit of tape hanging off, just that much. So that's interesting, because this right out of the box doesn't swipe. So I just realized, because this works, then a simple strand of this ought to work with the wax paper intact. Without removing the copper tape from the wax paper, we'll just run it around the circumference of this. Now, always be the person who puts away the roll of tape for the next person, because that person might be you. In the old days, we used to say, be kind, rewind. This is probably a critical step. I feel more worried about this project because of this not working than any other. Making things go up and down, you know, servos, controlling, variable power, blah, blah, blah. Not worried about any of that. It's just getting, I can't, it's a simple thing. I can't get a piece of tape to go around a wheel. We're gonna put a man on the moon. You see what's going on here. We're just gonna crimp it down and call it good. Okay, does it swipe? Nope, this doesn't work. A little bit, not too much though. However, this, not too bad. So you can see we got a rotary motion here. We just have to put this on one side of the wheel and we might have ourselves a winner. Doesn't tap though. It's not strong enough to tap. Well, that's the beautiful thing about this is we can just undo it. Control Z. I do tend to iterate a lot and undo things. There we go. That's interesting. Yeah. Throw that up. Boy, it really gives it a hot breakfast when it wants to go. Go! Swipe already! Oh, got to the end of my feed and I don't have a connection, so that's what you get. We gotta slow down this guy. Slow this bird down. Doesn't always work. Oh boy. Well, just as a quick test, I put a couple of AA batteries powering the DC motor using the out-of-the-box Arduino LED fade example, which drives PWM signal. So I'm running that signal into a NPN transistor just as a switch for the batteries here, and as you can see, it's not impossible. This can work. And we know it works because we can do that. But we're just having a little problem with, you know, I guess you could say, we're iterating, yeah. Got myself a reed switch. What, for counting the rip'ems on the gear turning. Come on, get it. Yeah, well, I figured out some stuff here. And what I figured out was that I gotta mount this. The other thing is I switched to a sponge to react with the capacitive screen. Copper tape was working some of the time, but it seemed a bit finicky. The only downside with this is it's gotta be kept moist with water, but so does this, right? This has to be kept moist with water, so I don't see the problem to proceed ahead with this. I got a reed switch right there, and I've got a magnet that I haven't figured out where it belongs yet, but I did discover that when the finger is swiping, it's best to start from, if this is perpendicular to the plane, and here's the screen, then zip, and to keep traveling until it hits some arbitrary point. Well, that spot should be about here, and then it needs to swipe again. So I think I've got that figured out. So here's currently what I got for my V0 prototype. I've got an IR emitter sensor pair as my switch, and some bugs to work out here. One of them being, I don't know, sometimes I get a sideways swipe. Now the way I've written the code on the Arduino is every time that reed switch is triggered, there's a reed switch here, and a pretty beefy neo-blah magnet. And if I just hold my hand over the sensor, it's gonna keep triggering. You can see there's the IR emitter. Now, next up on my plate is to get double tap happening, and I don't think I'm going to get double tap happening with this entire rig like this. I was thinking initially, wouldn't it be trick to have this unit kind of bump up and down? Here's a problem. Stop it. So it works with a finger. It works with milk. It works with next card. How about a pencil? It's okay. And the other funny little challenge I had is these DC motors, they don't know where to stop. And so I'm using a reed switch with, I guess you could say this is kind of a top dead center situation. I got a pull down resistor, so we're going high on one of the pins. When that goes to 1, we stop the motor. It takes the motor a quarter turn to come to a rest. Therefore, I've made the position of the reed switch adjustable. Now there's a downfall, of course, you got to keep the sponge moist. But the positive side, I think there's a couple of positive sides. This is not going to damage the glass. Well, I think where I've netted out with this is that This DC motor, I cannot get the finesse and control that I want. I really would like to tween into the swipe and not to have it just a single speed. I want it to ramp up real slow. Oh, and then, this brings up the point of my daughter looked at this and she's like, well, I can't crawl with my finger on this thing. And so what if instead of a binary reading, or basically a binary result from triggering this, what if we read voltage off of the receiver and used that as sort of a spatial distance thing? But that's a different application than being able to simply do that kind of a motion. So it depends on the application. But again, a servo would be better, a lot more control. This is pretty nutty at this point. I've got this reed switch in order to figure out what top dead center is. I might still need that with these servos because these are not positional. These are just continuous type of servo, and they just want to go forward, backward, and you give them the speed, but they don't know where they are. I was just running full steam off the Arduino to power the DC. I switched over to PWM to see if I couldn't get that ramping motion that I'm after. Not with this motor. It wants to start, basically it's got a hard knee on the power at about anything below 210 is not powering this motor at all. So the difference between two, you want a little bit of margin in there, so I'm ramping from 220 to 255. It's a little slower, but not much. And you can't crawl with it. So the other cool thing would be able to go backwards too. Of course, the cool thing would be to replicate a hand and all of the nuance that goes into that. But before I jettison this prototype, I'm going to properly mount this on a block of wood or something like that. And I will get the double tap functionality working with this prototype because I think we're halfway there. We've got a swiper. We just need a double tap mechanism, and Bob's your uncle. We can go on to V2 of using a servo, and then we'll have already figured out the double tap situation. Now, the funny thing about all this is, you can't see part of the screen. So yeah, something about your finger, you're occluding the view as well, but easily move it out of the way. So I don't really know what to do about that yet. We can't go backwards because there's no internet out here, and now it's just out of control at this point. Funny thing though, full side story, I almost ran out of electronics solder, but then I came across this. This is for plumbing, I believe. It's like a lifetime supply of solder right here. Real thick, but if you got a hot iron, it comes off exactly the same. This is going to last me 20 years. Well, this is what I came up with for a project board. Just a thin little piece of 1/8 inch birch veneer, something we used in a cabinet, something like that. There's wires all over the place over here on the breadboard, flags, everything. It's a bit of a mess, granted. How am I gonna clean up this demo? Wait and see. For a double tap mechanism, this is what I came up with. Now, this simple piston design. I've got a mount here where I'm going to put a reed switch, and I'm going to put the magnet on. Actually, I'm going to put it on bottom dead center. Wait a minute, piston's up, that's top dead center. I'm going to put the magnet, because it's heavy, I'm going to put it at the bottom of the gear at top dead center. I think that makes, my theory is that having this gear rest in the retracted state, having the entire piston retract here rather than here, that'll take care of one little problem, which was to keep springs out of this and make sure that we clear the screen when we're done double tapping. So the reed switch, we need that so we can count to 2. 1, 2. And if we don't have a counter, we're not going to know, because we're going to use, what are we going to use? We're going to use this, which means I got to solder this up. Interesting. This won't even swipe. I don't know why that would be. Is it too wet? Is it too small? So interestingly enough, I had to shape the tip of this sponge to be approximately the dimensions of a fingertip. Actually, this might even still be a bit too wide. So let's try that. I'm getting rather, frustratingly inconsistent results with this. So if we go, let's go back to this. So tap, tap. So that works pretty nice. Now, tap, tap. I can't spin this quick enough, so I'm gonna have to get this hooked up. I've got my marching orders. I know what to do now. I just gotta say, there's something very satisfying about this. Well, yeah. What do you rate my chances of success here with this? It's interesting. Strange. I found that with reed switches, you gotta have at least one of these cube-sized ones. The little itty-bitty guys, even if you double up on them, they don't seem to be as effective. And I'm like, oh boy, might be down to these last two. You always know you got a magnet in the vicinity because everything's sticking to it. Got the wires all freshly soldered up onto the leads with that little paper clip that I found stuck to the magnet. I always liked using those smaller gauge paper clips for breadboarding. Yep, we have spinach. Well, I found me the last reed switch in the house. Now, these things are so fragile, and it's really important to mount them on something, I have found. So what this is this is milk. And this is one of those cardboard box containers, and I scored one side of it with the X-Acto blade so that I could do this with it, right? And now I'm gonna put that somewhere along here, and as our magnet rolls by, boom. Yeah, I don't know if this little Lego motor is gonna have enough torque to turn this crankshaft over. Plus it's sticking, and that's not. Why is it sticking? Because there's glue all over the place. And our clearances are down to 0 basically, and being Legos, we're wiggling all over the place. So might have to add some spacers in here. Any change to this is adding friction and weight, so that's what you get. Well, as it turns out, 9 volts will turn it over. Well, and just as a extra check, 3 volts will turn it over as well. 3 volts. So, that transistor is the ignition transistor for the motor. And I already had this wired because I figured I'd need external power to turn these over. One thing led to another, and pretty soon things were working fine without it, but I kept it connected, and it's actually part of the circuit. I'm just feeding it to, what am I feeding it? 255. Oh yeah, we went through this already. 210 or 215 and ramping it up to 255. So 3/4 power up to full power. Well, that is running off the Arduino power right now, and it is chooching. I'm gonna have to be careful with this like button. I got suspended, I should say, from Instagram at one point for, I wrote a bot and it was going crazy and having a good time. Look at that. Works like a champ. Great. Where am I? What am I saying? What I'm saying is that we got a little rabbit's foot here, and we need to trigger this with the same kind of idea. We got an infrared pair. For this demo, this isn't really any kind of specific use case other than it needs to swipe in one direction and it needs to like. We're not going to worry about all the other possibilities right now, because if we do, we're not going to get anything done. Just the most basic kind of thing right now. And who knows, maybe someday this will save somebody's life. They'll be like, I need to click this button 1,000,000 times and swipe. Well, here you go. All right, well, things are coming along pretty good here. I've got the mounting block glued and clamped to the project board. I've got the mounting bracket for the reed switch here. Turns out the Legos that I was using were all cracked and broken, so there's, I hot schmooed the heck out of it. So this will mount pretty good. I really hope it works. We saw it work earlier, but I haven't figured out the timing on this thing, and I gotta add a 2-index counter to track this because it's got a double tap. I'm sure there'll be some frustrations and whatnot. She's a real mess. I've got 2 strap down points on either side of this block. And I tell you, this is gonna be real satisfying to run zip ties. That's what we're gonna just strap. Now, from a UX point of view, I think having the gesture controls be down in this area, if this is my phone, my aluminum block telephone, and if I have a sensor on this side, left hand, and a sensor on the right, double tap, that makes sense. Ding, ding, ding. For building movable standoffs, you can't beat Romex. And here I've just shorn off a chunk off a roll. Just make sure if you're cutting Romex and you don't know where the rest of the roll is, make sure you're not cutting off a live strand that might be electrified. Just because it's cut off AC, if it's connected to anything, it's sending the little pixies back and forth at a rapid speed. Always cut towards your thumb, never your chum. And it pre-insulated, which is nice. So we're going to use these as movable standoffs for both pairs of IR sensors. I don't know, I doubt anybody even cares about this step, but I do because I'm tired of these sensors just spring-loaded on themselves. It's the little things that make a project satisfying, even when you're working with junk material such as I am. This is just scraps out of the burn barrel. I feel like I should put a washer on the top of these things. Does it need it? I don't need it. Now I'm just gonna tin up the ends of these LEDs and wires with my plumbing solder, which if you get your iron up to about 850, works like a champ. I do have a little flux added to the wire, which, much to the chagrin of many of my former co-workers in the labs and so forth, always smoking out the shop. This is like a 20-year supply, so I'm embracing it. You know, I don't like breathing this stuff in. I have some air filtration going on. It's never exactly enough. In my opinion, for me, the most time-consuming thing about making robots or making anything with wires and breadboard and anything is soldering stuff and making it look like you actually are trying to care. So heat shrinking, shrink the heck out of everything. Two schools of thought on heat shrink. You either cook it till it's crispy or you just give it a quick melt. I am starting to come around to the crispy camp things going on. So there we go, IR pair. After espousing how important it is to have great looking solders, and then don't look at mine, though, look away. We can scroll. Oh, sometimes we get sideways side swipes. There's a swipe, there's a swipe, there's a swipe, and we can double tap if we know we're in the right position. We're not going to be able to scroll too much because there's no internet out here. The problem is that this doesn't tap quick enough. The frequency is too slow. It goes tap, tap. That's too slow for Instagram. It's got to go tap, tap. This the radius is too small in that the seat of this piston needs to be farther out on the radius so that it spins fast. Or something like that. We're making good contact. We've got... but again, the frequency is it needs to be like that. And we are a tad slower. Single tap. It seems to work fine. And unfortunately, I don't have I can't swipe back the other direction yet. I haven't put in a reversing mechanism yet, and I may not. This whole exercise is meant to be illustrative of possibilities, potential. Well, here's what I came up with. I got a larger OD gear communicating with the smaller gear that I had on there previously. That's resulting in a rapid increase in double tap speed. So now I'm just working out the linkage because these piston linkage things, they never work quite perfectly, especially in Legos because of the lack of bearings. But I'm not blaming. Nope. The key here, don't blame the materials. Don't hate the game. Don't hate player. Wait a minute. Don't hate. That's the key. Preliminary test indicates this will do the trick. Plus my magnet's gone, and I have to re-glue a magnet somewhere onto this guy. I'm thinking maybe on this stud that's over here. It should still trigger the reed switch. I've got this thing all kind of glued into a certain location, so it's a bit finely tuned to the previous design. This just might work. Well, here's kind of an unexpected little bug here. If I go quick, I can kind of make the engine chatter a little bit. This thing, when this magnet sweeps past that reed switch, the field starts affecting it back here, and it is basically triggering this thing repeatedly, which is not the case on the other wheels. I don't know. The other little issue, now that I have one big gear driving a smaller gear, it's not so simple now to find top dead center for this piston, because I can't put a magnet on it on the smaller wheel, which is what I was doing before. And now you could always find top dead center right there, or bottom dead center, and account for it in the code and know that this mechanical finger would be retracted, the finger, when not tapping, it would rest up high. And now this thing goes through top dead center twice. So just looking at this gear alone, there's no way to know what state this gear is in. Not that I can tell, unless you calibrate it at startup and you know where the gear starts out at, and then you got to rely on this triggering mechanism to be rock solid, and it's just not going to be. Well, we might be there with this thing. Come on now. No, there could be no human intervention in this demo. Oh, okay, there we go. Come on. Yes! Yes! It's working! There's no internet out here, so my feed won't refresh. I only have so many, I only have so many friends. Alright, so it works with Instagram. Does it work with TikTok? No, because well, I mean, it works, but I don't have anything in my...
And authors don't give a rap. So what's happening, Lila? What is going down?
Alright, you see what's going on here? We got 2 IR. Okay, let's take... Alright, so this is my swiping control. And this is my... It's a continuous tapper. Because you can let it go to town on whatever you happen to be over. And I haven't really calibrated the double tap or the single tap. It just kind of goes for it. Oh, I see what I did. I'm saving the darn thing. I didn't mean to do that. Can you cancel? Cancel. No, tic-tac. Tic-tac. Well, let's just try, whoa, hey, slow down there, buddy. It's gone crazy. Let's try this again. Swipe. Like. Come on, this is something. Oh, there we go. There's a like. Yeah, like. There we go. Well, I got suspended from Instagram once for doing stuff like this. Of course, I was using Selenium, which is different, to automate my likes. Yeah, I think we're out of sync a little bit here. Oh, that was a good one. Here we go. Let's like this one. Okay, well, I'll tell you, there's one little problem with, you've got to keep these sponges hydrated. And that might be, oh, there we go. Yeah. Come on. There you go. Yes! I'd sure like to build this using actual servos so I could get away from using reed switches and counters and things like that in the code. It gets a little tricky, especially, you can't count on the reed switch firing exactly the way you want it to. I'm not doing a whole lot of sophisticated stuff here. Pull down resistor, the usual suspect. Here we go. The other major problem is I'm not able to crawl with these DC motors. If you use PWM, you can basically the lowest threshold is about 220. So you can't crawl. We'll be able to crawl with a regular servo. Nice. Here's the thing with this: if you let this thing go crazy on its own, it will literally get you suspended from Instagram or TikTok or whatever you might be engaging with. Oh yeah, I almost forgot the most important thing. Yes, the most important thing being, how do we make this look at least like we're trying? The answer, my friends, matte black paint. Well, I hope you all enjoyed that. So if anything, this is just an exploration and just having a little fun during this downtime that I'm experiencing right now. Let me know what you think. In the next video, I'll do this again using better components, and hopefully we're gonna get better performance out of it. Have a good one. Don't smoke all your op amps.